presence of your joy, your aspiration, your love and caring for the world, for each other, for your loved ones, for this earth, for animals, and for this brief life that we have here. And I'd like to talk a little bit about intuition. The title, I guess, today is Awakening Your Inner Genius. Oh, okay. It's on the right page here. And the idea, essentially, is that all of us have enormous inner powers that we can draw on and from. And yet we're all born into a culture that in many ways does not encourage those powers, and in many ways actually stomps on them and reduces them. And so I think the spiritual teachings of the world, and I think they're very strongly present in unity. One of the main things is to help us to reconnect with our wisdom, our genius, our creativity, our empowerment, compassion, and our purpose. And Madeline and I, she's normally always sitting right here, but it's unusual in the summer. We usually take a little bit of a break, and she's in Switzerland with her mother, 92-year-old mother, wow, helping take care. But pretty much every Sunday through most of the year, we are in a Unity church somewhere, and it's been like that for over 20 years. So I've been really to many hundreds of churches, obviously, over the years. And I want to say, even just in the beginning, that I think Unity is one of the most healthy movements, really, in our culture today, because it's based essentially on the principle of radical inclusion, that we are, as we unfold spiritually, morally, ethically, and intellectually, we begin to see that we are part of larger wholes, of a society, of ecosystems, of a cosmos, that we're connected to everything, that everything is connected, and that our welfare essentially is dependent on the welfare of all of us, that we're all in this together at a very deep level. And so we have to realize that we've been born into a culture that teaches us in many ways the opposite of that. I remember when I was a kid growing up, we were taught that we would, if we just believed a certain set of beliefs, then we would get to go to this exclusive heaven that was ours, where God really liked us more than anybody else, this kind of thing, this exclusivism. And this causes so much conflict and delusion. And so I think what Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were doing was in many ways trying to get back to the original teachings of Jesus, which happened to be the original teachings of all the great founders of all the traditions. And essentially, I think they're twofold. Number one is a calling to authentically connect with the transpersonal dimension of what we are. This Old Testament idea of love God and love your neighbor. Number one, love God. That means to connect authentically with the divine. That which transcends the self-centered perspective that we normally have. How can I get what I want? There's a teaching in the Buddhist tradition of the three poisons, and the idea is that all of us in consciousness have these three poisons. The original one is ignorance, which is basically thinking that I'm fundamentally separate from others and from the world. And out of that one comes the other two, which are basically trying to get what I want, this sort of acquisitiveness, just trying to take and get, because I'm afraid. It's really underneath it. And the other one is trying to keep away what I don't want. So we're in this constant struggle. Either sometimes it's very gross, and we're actually hitting someone. Sometimes it's very subtle, and we're just trying to manipulate everything so we can get what we want, keep away what we don't want. But this is, in the Buddhist tradition, called samsara, which means suffering that never ends. It goes in many lifetimes. So the whole idea, I think, in all the traditions is that essentially to cultivate an authentic connection with what transcends that whole drama. And that this requires us to quiet our mind. That we all have going in the background this narrative, this story, me and my life, what I did, and what I wish I would have done. I wish they would have done. I hope they don't do that. I hope I can do this. This is just growing. How many of you actually have a meditation practice? Some of you have a meditation practice? Some of you, I hope. Yeah. Well, you find out, if you have a meditation practice, you know what I'm talking about. You don't don't have a meditation practice, you might know what I'm talking about, because it's just dry. But that narrative is injected into us in many ways, by the Walmart ads, by the McDonald's ads, by what my father told me when I was 4 years old, what my mother, my teachers, what the ministers said, not the other ministers, but they said. Told us, these voices live within us, and they propel us in our life. And that's what drives us to have the job that we want to have, and have the mate that we want to have, and have the car that we want to have, and all these things that we want to have and we don't want to have, all these other things. So to question all that, to connect authentically with a higher knowing, where we see directly that what we are, in a sense, in essence actually, is inseparable from this source. When we go, for example, to the beach, and we see, we're walking along, we see some footprints in the sand. We look at those footprints and we know that when I see a footprint, that is not Charlie who was walking by here 20 minutes ago. That's just Charlie's footprint. We don't go up to the footprint and say, hey Charlie, how are you doing? No, that's just the footprint. Well, it's the same thing with this. This is just a footprint. You cannot see the one who is making this footprint. We address each other as if we do. We say, oh, you're looking good today, or you're looking a little thin, or a little fat, or old, or young, or all these things. We have a name, it's called namarupa, name and form. That is not the being. The being, you can't see with physical eyes, and yet that is the life force. That's what we truly are. And when we begin, through our spiritual practice, to realize we are that. We are the eternal life that has never been born and will never die. And we're manifesting with a vehicle here. We'll begin to have born within our heart the great compassion. Begin to see others as sacred manifestations of the same life. And it won't be that we have to try hard not, to be kind to them. I think in the beginning, that's like training wheels. We do need ethical teachings, not to harm others. But once we begin to realize we